Welcome to the Hindu News Analysis by Shankar Academy. Displayed are a list of news articles selected for today's analysis and their page numbers in different editions of the newspaper. The link for the handwritten notes in the PDF format and the timestamping of the discussed articles are provided in the description and also in the comment section for the benefit of the viewers. Now let us move on to the analysis of first news article. This editorial article talks about the reasons behind China's aggressiveness along the line of actual control. It talks about what led to the present crisis along LAC and also about salami-size strategy used by China to bring the global order under its control. The syllabus relevant for the analysis of this editorial article is highlighted here for your reference. We have been hearing about multiple rounds of diplomatic talks between India and China since the clashes at the Galwan Valley in eastern Ladakh. These talks are carried out to ease the current tensions and also for the troops to disengage. But according to the author of this editorial, the present tensions are unlikely to be solved quickly as the ground situation is more complex. In that sense, it may take more time than the time taken with reference to Doklam standoff in 2017, which took more than 70 days. Normally, when there is dispute between neighboring countries, one of the major triggering factors would be the interference in the internal matters or internal affairs of other country. In this context, author answers whether India interfered in the internal affairs of China. See, with respect to China, India has always remained cautious not to disturb China's domestic and geopolitical sensitivities. For example, India avoids criticizing China on controversial issues like China's repression on protests and democratic actions in Hong Kong, and India avoids criticizing China's disputes with Taiwan as well. But occasionally, India is, along with US and Asia Pacific countries, in releasing joint statements asserting commitment to freedom of navigation, which is actually a hidden criticism of China's claim over South China Sea. So generally, India does not interfere in the internal affairs of China. But still there is a standoff again and increased tensions we could see along LAC. So what led to the current tensions between India and China? One of the reasons generally mentioned is the local factors or the internal matters within India's territory. For example, India's infrastructure upgrade along its side of line of actual control so as to uphold the principle of equal security. Because China has already built high-end infrastructure on its side of line of actual control. Then the second thing generally mentioned was the decision of India to change the status of Jammu and Kashmir and bringing most of the part of erstwhile state of J&K into the central control by announcing part of that erstwhile state as Union Territory of Ladakh. But author states these internal factors within India are not the main reasons for China's aggressiveness. The main reason is the clear shift in Chinese foreign policy after COVID-19 outbreak. We know that China is an ambitious rising power that wants to reorient the global order in its control and in its favor. It is touted as the new superpower on the rise. In the early stages of its rise, it adopted different tactical positions. One of its tactics used was hide your capacity and bide your time. That means you adopt a low profile by hiding your capacity and intention and wait for the right time to proceed. This kind of foreign policy. This tactic means that China will hide its intention and it will wait for the right moment, which is the time in which the opponent's power is reduced. And during the initial periods of its rise, it focused much on economy and its technological base. It avoided conflicts unless its direct interests are in danger, and it stayed mostly neutral and invisible in those disputes which are not directly concerning China. So in the earlier phases, China avoided conflict with powers such as United States. This strategy worked very well for China, and it had decades of uninterrupted growth and was almost forgotten as a potential opponent by the West, particularly USA. Now we have discussed how US was complicit or was part of China's rise on June 5, 2020. Only in the last few years, USA has realized that in many areas, China had caught up and is actually overtaking them. Say, for example, the 5G race where China is attempting to secure the digital dominance from USA, or China's aspiration to become the global manufacturing hub. In other words, we can say that in the earlier phases or in the initial stage, China followed tactics of peaceful rise or peaceful development, or with reference to India at least after the Sino-Indian War of 1962. More importantly, in the last 45 years, there was no fatality along the line of actual control till the recent clashes at the Galwan Valley. Now, we saw that there is a clear shift in Chinese foreign policy. This is because of the present time, which is a pandemic situation. Global economy is struggling to recover. Globalization has come to a halt. USA is taking aggressive position towards China on various issues, and USA is presently reeling under the COVID crisis, with every day recording more than 25,000 new infections being confirmed. So because of this, China believes that the global order is at a breaking point so as to take advantage. Therefore, China is adopting a shift in its foreign policy using salami slice strategy. This is to take control of the global order. Now, this strategy is a process where a country will gradually reduce the size of opponent by a series of small incremental steps. The size we could refer to the size of the economy or the size of the territory or the scale of power that a country commands. Under this strategy, China attempts to establish its hegemony piece by piece. It is gradually reducing USA's hegemony in South Asian and Southeast Asian region and wants to gain leadership. We can see this through the rising tensions of China with US in terms of Chinese threat against Taiwan, in terms of bringing new security law for Hong Kong, in asserting aggressive claims in South China Sea, etc. And the disputes along border with India is just a piece of or part of China's shift in foreign policy. Now, another reason for Chinese aggression, apart from its shift in foreign policy, is because of China's perception of decline regarding India. Because China does not see India as a swing state anymore. Here, swing state refers to India's position wherein it becomes important in determining the prominence of a country in international affairs. Say, for example, its importance as a swing state is important to determine who has hegemony in the world. But now, China does not see India as a swing state supporting both US and China. This is because China considers India no more a swing state, rather as an ally in progress of USA. China believes that it has lost India strategically to the United States of America. Additionally, China was able to detect the decline in India's smart power. Here, smart power used by author is associated with slowdown in Indian economy, further economic challenges due to COVID crisis, disagreements in domestic polity among sections of Indians with reference to Citizenship Amendment Act or National Register of Citizens, etc. And the smart power is also related with India's losing traditional influence in its neighborhood. This is because of tensions with Pakistan, then boundary issues with Nepal, then update of NRC in the state of Assam, and Bangladesh concern with respect to India, whether it will deport the illegal immigrants under Citizenship Amendment Act, etc. So these are all various factors used by author to say that India's smart power is declining, which was detected by China. Even with respect to Afghanistan, India is not involved in Afghan Taliban talks. However, China, USA, and even in one UN meeting, Pakistan was also involved. And the operational failure in Balakot airstrike, because India lost a jet to Pakistan and Indian pilot was captured and later released by Pakistan. So author states that the whole operation exposed weak points in India's defense. So all these factors converged and pointed to a decline in India's smart power, and this allowed China to make aggressive moves on the line of actual control. While USA considers India as a counterweight or counterbalance to China, China does not consider, or it is no more worried or deterred about India as its counterweight. This also means that the geopolitical power status gained by India during Doklam standoff is declining because of recent standoffs. This is because during the Doklam standoff, India was able to support Bhutan, and the negotiations India carried out with China resulted in withdrawal of troops from both sides, and the standoff was resolved with no casualty or fatality. This strengthened India's partnership with Asian countries in South and Southeast Asia at that point of time. So the author concludes that China's aggression is associated with all these reasons, and its present aggression along line of actual control is a strategic trap. And it is mentioned that India is in this position partly because of lack of depth in strategic thinking. And India needs a national security strategy focusing on neighborhood realism, we can understand that India did not lose China but also Pakistan, Nepal, and Bangladesh. So at the present time, the author concludes that India should stand up to China, should have a long-term focus on enhancing its capabilities and winning back its friendly neighbors. So these are some of the important information with reference to the analysis of this editorial article. In the article, we saw about reasons behind China's aggressiveness, decline in India's smart power, then salami slice strategy. Now let us move on to the next news article. This lead editorial article, written by former Foreign Secretary, is with reference to foreign policy and diplomacy. We can take some core points from this editorial. One is that foreign policy initiatives of the past should not be judged through the prism of the present. If it is to be judged based on the prism of the present, then it will damage the formulation of foreign policy itself. In simple terms, initiatives of friendly relations with countries should not be narrowly judged after something negative or destructive happened between the two countries. Judging a situation after something has happened is called as hindsight, and the term 2020 hindsight, it refers to it is easy to understand something, particularly after the occurrence of an event. This 2020 hindsight is not good for formulation of appropriate foreign policy because foreign policy initiatives are generally taken to realize the promise or the hope to take relations in a positive direction. The author justifies this based on some examples. See, in the initial years of independence, India did not want to be a turf or a platform for Cold War so that it should not lose focus on developmental activities. However, in the year 1971, India needed the support of Soviet Union. This cannot be criticized because at that time, US supported Pakistan on Kashmir issue and China was hostile to India. And also, US and China came closer in 1971 as in that year, the National Security Advisor of United States, Henry Kissinger, visited China. It was in that juncture, India was facing refugee crisis from East Pakistan and we needed Indo-Soviet Union partnership to liberate Bangladesh. Next, we can also say that the India-US strong strategic relations might not have made sense in 1971, but it is at present a very big deal. Also, if you see now, significant population from India have settled in US and they are temporarily working in United States. And US has also elevated India's relation with itself, particularly since 2000, and even recently it announced India as a major defense partner in 2016. Even if you see, the present Prime Minister made a surprise visit to Pakistan in 2015, but in the very next year, in 2016, we witnessed brutal terrorist attacks in Pathankot in Jan 2016 and in Uri attack in September 2016. Can these events nullify the visit of Prime Minister to Pakistan in 2015 is the question raised by the author. So the success or failure in foreign policy or foreign policy initiatives can be properly assessed only in the light of then historical circumstances and the then regional and international environment and not based on present circumstances. This is the crux of the editorial, and the foreign policy should not fall victim to very narrow competition or jousting in domestic politics. This can be very damaging to intelligent and careful foreign policy making. The author notes that as far as Indian foreign policy is concerned, irrespective of ideological differences among the ruling parties at the center, be it United Progressive Alliance or BJP or National Democratic Alliance or others, successive governments have always upheld India's interests firmly and judiciously. So these are some of the points from this editorial. Now let us move on to next discussion. This news article is with reference to few reforms introduced by Government of India in space sector. One of the reforms is establishing Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center, and the other is that the New Space India Limited, the public sector enterprise, will reorient space activities from supply-driven model to a demand-driven model. That is, NSIL will move towards more commercialization in its functions with the involvement of private sector. These reforms were hailed as historic and far-reaching in space sector as these reforms are aimed at boosting private sector participation in the entire range of space activities. The decisions are taken in line with long-term vision of transforming India and making India a self-reliant and technologically advanced economy. In this context, let us discuss in brief about the newly created InSpace or Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center. The syllabus relevant for the analysis of this news article is highlighted here for your reference. See, this center established by the government is to be an autonomous nodal agency under the Department of Space. It is the national nodal agency for promotion and regulation of activities of private industry in space sector. Now, ISRO will share its technical expertise and facilities with InSpace. The Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center will have its own independent directorates for technical issues, legal issues, safety and security, monitoring and activities promotion. All these things with reference to assessing the private industry requirements and to coordinate activities with them. The private sector will be given opportunities so as to undertake research and development activities. And also it will be made a co-traveler in advanced interplanetary missions as well. This is planned to be executed through a mechanism called as announcement of opportunities. Actually, the government was earlier in the idea of bringing such reforms through a legislation called as the Space Activities Bill of 2017. The draft of this bill was prepared by Department of Space. It mentioned about encouraging private sectors in space activities in India. This was released in 2017, inviting suggestions from stakeholders, but has not yet materialized. Later, in 2019, at the budget announcement, government informed about formation of a new commercial entity of ISRO called as New Space India Limited. This was established in March 2019. See, it is the second commercial entity of Indian Space Research Organization. It aims to tap the benefits of R&D work carried out by ISRO. It will also lead the commercialization of various space products, which include production of launch vehicles, transfer of technologies, marketing of space products. Now, with reference to NSIL, we have also seen this in our daily news analysis on 17th May 2020 as well. We said it is the second commercial entity. The first commercial entity which is still in operation is Antrix Corporation Limited, which was formed in the year 1992. Now let us see the significance of recent reforms announced by the Government of India. See, space sector plays a catalytic role in technological advancement and expansion of industrial base. This is because to carry out space activities, we need critical and high-end technologies. Hitherto, these things are available with the government, that is with the ISRO. But the reforms are aiming to propagate this also to private players as well. Then in space-related activities in space, various experiments will be conducted in low-gravity environment. These experiments will help in technological advancement of the country. So space sector, with the involvement of private sector, will play a major catalytic role in the technological advancement and expansion of our industrial base. Then, because of the involvement of private players along with government, the reforms will enhance socio-economic use of space assets and activities through improved access to space assets, data and facilities to the private sector. In the beginning, we saw that the role of NSIL will be redefined from being a supply-driven model to demand-driven model for space-based activities. NSIL will be strengthened and empowered so as to relieve ISRO from some of the operational activities. It will relieve or offload ISRO from the areas of launch vehicles, satellite production, launch services and other space-based services as well. Some of these may not happen immediately. In these areas, say for example production of launch vehicles, satellite production, New Space India Limited will execute through industry consortiums, or in other words will execute through private players. This will allow ISRO to focus more time and resources for its research and development. So ISRO will emphasize more on development of advanced technology, exploration missions, human spaceflight programs and other capacity building activities related to space sector. Then these reforms will also help Indian industry to be an important player in global space economy. At present, India is one among the top 6 or top 5 countries that has made some significant achievements in space. Now, these reforms will accelerate the pace of growth of India in the space sector. And as a result, because of participation of industry consortiums, there will be opportunity for large-scale employment in the technology sector and it will help India becoming a global technology powerhouse. In addition to these reforms, a new satellite navigation policy is also being proposed, and other policies such as remote sensing data policy, satellite communication policy will have some changes so as to align these policies to open an inclusive space sector. So these are some of the important points from the analysis of this news article. We saw about few reforms announced in the space sector by the government. We saw about in-space. Then we also saw how the reforms are significant in terms of benefits to our country. Now let's move on to the analysis of next news article. This news article appeared on the front page of today's newspaper. It talks about a letter written by the governor of Nagaland to the chief minister of the state. In the letter, the governor has expressed that the scenario in the state is grim and the law and order has collapsed. In the analysis of this news article, we'll see about the grim reality in Nagaland, then few important provisions of Article 371, Capital A of Indian Constitution. The syllabus relevant for the analysis of this news article is highlighted here for your reference. Now in the letter, Governor Sri R.N. Ravi says that constitutionally established state government of Nagaland is being challenged on day-to-day basis by armed gangs. These gangs question the integrity and sovereignty of India. There are more than 6 armed gangs in the state that run their own governments parallelly. They undermine state machinery. They appoint their own dealers for every commodity from salt to construction material that comes into the state. They also impose illegal taxes on every item. They extort money from trucks carrying goods at gunpoint. This leads to cost escalation in transportation in the state of Nagaland because of security concerns. And in fact, several national highways projects are getting stalled if 5 to 7% of the project cost is not given to such armed gangs. So it is in these tough situations, the officials of Government of India and the state of Nagaland are carrying out their day-to-day duties. In this context, the news article reports that Governor is to assume powers under Article 371 Capital A of Indian Constitution. He is to assume important functions like transferring and posting of officials who are entrusted with maintenance of law and order. These officials are of the district level or above the district level, and they will be appointed only with the approval of the governor. Now let us see about Article 371 Capital A. See, it comes under Part 21 of Indian Constitution. Part 21 of Indian Constitution deals with temporary, transitional and special provisions. It consists of Article 370 to Article 371J, and under this part there are special provisions with respect to different states. Here, of these special provisions, Article 371 Capital A deals with the state of Nagaland. You may recollect that yesterday we discussed about another part in this Indian Constitution, that is Part 16. We saw that it deals with special provisions related to certain classes so as to realize the objectives of equality and justice as laid in the preamble. In that context, yesterday we discussed about Article 340 of Indian Constitution. Now come to Part 21 of Indian Constitution, which contains Article 371 Capital A. Now this article, it was inserted to Constitution by 13th Constitutional Amendment Act of 1962. It came into force on 1st December 1963. Now this day is the statehood day of Nagaland. Nagaland became 16th state of Indian Union on 1st December 1963. The same day this article came into effect. Now, according to this article, an act of parliament or a law made by parliament will not be applicable to Nagaland in 4 matters. One is religious and social practices of the Nagas, then Naga customary law and procedure, then administration of civil justice and criminal justice involving decisions according to Naga customary law, then also on ownership and transfer of land and its resources. If at all to make a law of parliament applicable on these matters, the Legislative Assembly of Nagaland must pass a resolution supporting such act of parliament. Then this article gives special powers to the governor of Nagaland. As mentioned in the news article, Article 371 Capital A, Clause 1, Subclause B, it empowers governor with special responsibilities with respect to law and order of the state. So it is using this power under this article, the governor of Nagaland has announced to assume important functions so as to transfer and post officials related to law and order of and above the district level. The article also talks about when will the special powers of governor will cease to have effect. This will be based on an order of the President of India. So when President feels that governor no longer require such special powers relating to law and order, the President can issue an order barring governor from assuming powers. So we just saw about part 21 of Indian Constitution, and keep in mind only if Nagaland Assembly passes a resolution, a law of Parliament can be applied with reference to certain matters we just saw in the discussion, and that the governor is empowered with special responsibilities with reference to law and order of Nagaland state. With this we come to the end of analysis of this news article. Now let us move on to next article. This news talks about eSanjeevani. In this context, let us see about this eSanjeevani. See, it is National Teleconsultation Service. It is a telemedicine service launched by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. It is mentioned as first of its kind online outpatient department service offered by government to the citizens. Under this service, healthcare services will be provided to patients who are in their homes through online mode. Through this eSanjeevani portal, people can consult doctors through online facility. It's a completely web-based system right from registration of patient till the downloading of e-prescription. Here when we say telemedicine, it refers to delivery of healthcare services using information technology for diagnosis, treatment, prevention of disease and injuries, research, evaluation, etc. All in the interests of advancing health of individuals and the health of communities. This is a completely free service launched by the government. Doctors in this portal, they are empaneled from state service by each state government. This telemedicine system is being deployed nationally by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare at around 1,55,000 health and wellness centers under the Ayushman Bharat scheme of the government. The web portal of this telemedicine service is developed by Center for Development of Advanced Computing, shortly called as CDAC. CDAC is a premier R&D organization of Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Now coming to the name Sanjeevani, it comes from a mythical herb, Sanjeevani, which is described in Ramayana. It is described as it has saved the life of Lakshman, who was brother of Lord Ram. Lord Hanuman arrived in the Himalayas to gather this life-saving herb, but since he could not identify Sanjeevani, he uprooted part of the mountain and carried it to Lanka. And this herb is mythologically known for saving a person from death, or a herb that gives life. In this manner, this eSanjeevani telemedicine service is also to act as saving lives of Indians by facilitating online consultation. With this, we come to the end of analysis of this news article. The article mentions that Tiruppur district in the state of Tamil Nadu ranks first for the usage of eSanjeevani in Tamil Nadu. Now let's move on to next news article. This news article is with reference to the proposed Environment Impact Assessment Notification 2020. If the notification comes into effect, it is to replace the Environment Impact Assessment Notification of 2006. Now, when we come to the objective of Environment Impact Assessment, it aims to assess, predict and foresee potential environment problems at an early stage of project planning and project design itself. This assessment, it helps authorities to address the environmental concerns either by formulating appropriate mitigation measures or impact reduction measures, or they will never allow such projects to continue given the case where sustainable development will be affected by such project. Now let us look into few concerns in brief which are raised by environmental defenders and environmental activists about the draft 2020 notification. See, this draft of 2020, it reduces the period of public hearing, which includes submission of proceedings of public hearing, from 45 days to 40 days. That means the leverage that public had so far has been reduced. Then the minimum notice period provided for the public to submit their responses is reduced from 30 days to 20 days. So this actually reduces the time available for public scrutiny of a particular project. Then the draft exempts certain projects from public consultation. Environmentalists allege that these classification, it is dilution over the existing arrangement of 2006 EIA notification. Some of the projects are irrigation projects, projects concerning national defense and security, and also other projects involving strategic considerations. The term strategic consideration is not defined in the draft notification. So this compromises public scrutiny and transparency, which are very important with reference to environmental governance. Then the draft also increases the validity of environmental clearances for mining projects from 30 years in the current legal framework to 50 years. The validity of river valley projects is proposed to be increased from 10 years to 15 years. This again is associated with the risk of concerns related to some of the irreversible environmental social consequences. That one more allegation is that the deadline for public comments is open only till June 30. While the draft was initially released in March 2020, the nation was in lockdown. Therefore, several activists are asking the government that why there is haste with reference to processing of draft environmental impact assessment notification. And even several student unions have asked the union government to put on hold this draft 2020 notification. So these are some of the information with reference to the analysis of this news article. We'll get more information on this draft environment impact assessment as and when a related news article appears in the newspaper. Now let's move on to next part of the discussion. This news article is about recent decision of US government to suspend issuing new visas in 4 non-immigrant visa categories. One of them is H1B visa. If you see, before 2017, Indian IT companies were receiving about 15,000 such H1B visas so as to take Indian employees to work in United States at their client sites. However, after 2017, the number reduced to around 6,000. This highlights the policy priority of US government with reference to issuing H1B visa, in particular to Indian IT sector. Now, the recent decision of US discourages Indian IT companies, and this may affect Indian exports in IT sector also. See, around 60% of export of Indian IT sector is to the United States. Note that the contribution of IT sector to gross domestic product is around 8%, and it nullifies 50% of mercantile trade deficit, or in other words, it nullifies 50% of deficit in trade of goods. In the light of these considerations, the move of United States is a matter of bilateral concern between the two countries. Now, with reference to what do we mean by H1B visa, what were the recent announcements made by US in this regard, what are going to be the implications, we have covered in detail in our daily news analysis on 24th June 2020, that is on day before yesterday. For these details, we request viewers to watch the first discussion on 24th June. Now, this news article, it is a response to the approval of Cabinet to bring an ordinance. The ordinance is to bring urban cooperative banks and multi-state cooperative banks under the supervision of Reserve Bank of India. The article reports that it is an attack on federalism and rights of the states. In fact, in some states, there were concerns that this move was taken without discussing with the state governments. They allege that the failure of 1 or 2 cooperative banks should not take away the freedom of states in managing and exercising control over such banks. In this regard, we discussed yesterday about the concept of duality of control, which is the present system of control. Then we saw about benefits for depositors if the ordinance is to come into effect. Then we saw about board for financial supervision of RBI and the significance of bringing such banks under the supervision of RBI. For these details, we suggest viewers to have a look on 25th June 2020 Daily News Analysis. Now, this news article states that Moscow and Washington had divided Korea into two at the end of the Second World War. It states that both Korean countries marked the 70th anniversary of the start of Korean War yesterday. In this context, we would like to inform viewers that on 18th of June 2020, we have discussed about birth of 2 Korean states, then the history among them, and we also saw the recent events between them. For these details, you may have a look on the Daily News Analysis of 18th June 2020. Now let's move on to the next part of the discussion. We have come to the last session, the practice questions discussion session. This question is with reference to eSanjeevani. The question reads, eSanjeevani, sometimes seen in news, is an ambulance aggregator developed by students and alumni of IIT Bombay. This service is called as Help Now, an initiative launched by alumni of IIT Bombay. A web-based national telemedicine service developed by Center for Development of Advanced Computing. Now, this is the correct answer for this question. Come to option C, a platform that facilitates hosting of all the courses taught in classrooms from class 9 till post-graduation to be accessed by anyone, anywhere, at any time. This option corresponds to Swayam portal of Ministry of Human Resource Development. Option D, a technology system in India that digitizes vaccine stocks and monitors the temperature of the cold chain through a smartphone application. This option D, it corresponds to Electronic Vaccine Intelligence Network. So here the correct answer is option B. Now see this question. It reads, with reference to temporary, transitional and special provisions mentioned in the Constitution, consider the following statements. The temporary, transitional and special provisions are mentioned in Part 21 of the Constitution. Now this statement is correct. Now, the second statement is incorrect because according to this article, no act of parliament in respect of Naga customary law shall apply to the state of Nagaland unless the Legislative Assembly of Nagaland decides by a resolution to make a law of parliament applicable in the state of Nagaland over this matter. This provision also applies with reference to religious and social practices of Nagas, administration of civil and criminal justice involving decisions according to Naga customary law, then ownership and transfer of land and its resources. Here they are asking for incorrect statement. So the correct answer for this question is option B, 2 only, because only the second statement is incorrect. Consider the following. They are asking which of the pairs given above are correctly matched. Forest, union list, protection of wild animals, concurrent list. See, only the second one is correctly matched. Know that even forests come under concurrent list. See, the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976 introduced two important entries in list 3, that is in the concurrent list of 7th schedule. One is forests, then protection of wild animals and birds. Question asks for the pair that is correctly matched. Option B, 2 only. See this mains question in GS3. Recent reforms initiated by the government in the space sector has the potential to make India an important player in global space economy. Discuss. For this question, you may mention about the reforms in brief recently announced by government that gives space to private players in space sector. You can mention about the creation of Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Center to promote and regulate the private industry in space sector. Then you can mention about the reorientation of New Space India Limited from supply-based approach to demand-based approach, leading to more commercialization involving private sector. You can say that these reforms help ISRO to focus more on research and development, space exploration, human spaceflight program, etc., while private players will focus on developing production of launch vehicles, satellites, etc. This will be extremely helpful because as a single entity, ISRO may not be able to effectively use the time and resources on exploration, human spaceflight programs, research and development. So the collaboration of ISRO with private players will give India an edge at the global level. With the involvement of private sector, Indian space sector will facilitate commercialization of launch vehicles, launch operations, development of satellites, which will be carried out by private sector. For various countries and other space agencies, India could offer such facilities. An inclusion of private player as a co-traveler in some areas related to space along with ISRO will help in advancement of technology and also in expansion of India's industrial base. All these efforts in a course of time may lead to India launching space objects and other vehicles along with private participation in the same way how SpaceX and NASA have achieved sending NASA astronauts to International Space Station. With this, we come to the end of today's The Hindu News Analysis. If you like the video, if you would have enjoyed the content, don't fail to click the like button and share this resource among your friends and those who are in need of such resources. And subscribe to the Shankar Academy YouTube channel to get notified about new updates.